Comrades, life is weird and then you die. I think we all know this, that life is weird and then you die, but it's my kind of motto. And sometimes it feels like a thought terminating cliche, Someone's telling me a really weird story about something that happened in life, because life is filled with all kinds of weird stories, and if you think about it, really even being alive is weird enough, even if it's boring. The fact that you could be bored being alive, spending one of the few precious moments you have on this earth being bored, and that we all feel this at some point, that's weird. That's weird in of itself, even if it's boring.
Chapter 1, God's Unholy Microwave.
But recently, it's been snowing a lot, but today it got warm, it got hot, actually not really hot, in the grand scheme of things, objectively speaking, but I am now conditioned to being inside, and I am now incapable, I'm now a dysfunctional human being, and I am incapable of existing very well outside. And now, whenever I'm outside, it is either somehow too cold, or too hot, or even often both at the same time. Like, I'm one of those microwave burritos, where you put the burrito in the microwave and it comes back and it's frozen on the inside and it's burnt on the outside, and you go, how is this possible? Why can't the temperature average in the burrito? And you get just a decently warm burrito throughout, maybe a hot burrito throughout, but not a burnt burrito. But when you go outside and you do that and it's cold, it's really kind of the opposite, because it feels like you're burnt on the inside, but you're outside, your extremities, your hands are freezing off, like God is microwaving you with some magic microwave that does the opposite, that heats you from the outside. All this is to say that there was snow on the ground, and because it's now a little bit warmer, the snow is melting, and snow melting makes me think of death.
Chapter 2, Maybe I Think About Mortality Too Often.
I mean, really, a lot of things make me think of death if you think about it, We're coming to spring, which is the end of the school year, and that always makes me think of a landmark that's ending. We have the calendar year ends in January, but the school year growing up was much more important to me. And so it's built into my head. It's deep within the framework of my mind that I cannot escape, that really the real end of the year is in spring, and then summer happens, and summer ends. We get fall, and it's always ending, and time is always pushing you forward, and always makes you think how time is moving, and how you were going to die. And so I was thinking how I was going to make a video about sharks, but I couldn't stop thinking about this, how life is weird and then you die, and I thought maybe there is something wrong with me. Maybe I should not be looking at melting snow and have it make me think of my impending mortality. Maybe this is a me problem. I mean, there are plenty of me problems, and that sounds like one of them, but how? Now that I have spent a little bit more time thinking about it, how can we ever not be thinking about how life is weird and then you die? It's just that we all know this. You know that life is weird, you know that you are going to die, and I think that's really the difference between us and the sharks.
Chapter 3, Not Like Other Featherless Bipeds.
Right? That's the difference between us and all of the animals. People... There's this great quote that goes around the internet. I don't know where it came from, because the person who I heard it from didn't know where it came from. But it's, humans are not too smart to be animals for the reason whales are not too big to be animals. I think we all want to say there's something different about being a human. There's something different about the human experience, that we aren't just any animal, and we try and point at intelligence. But I don't think it's that. I think there is a qualitative difference in our experience, and I think that qualitative difference in our experience is not just that we will die, because we will all die, but that we know that we are alive right now in this brief moment, and we know that it is weird, and that we know that we will die. I think there might be other animals that don't really understand death at all. I don't know if an ant understands when one of its ant brother dies. But you have a dog, and a dog can see, a wolf can see that a member of its pack died, and it can be sad for that. But I wonder, does the dog know that the dog will die too? I think that really is. That's the difference between us and the animals. Not that we were better in any way. Not that we were really that different in our external existence. But we have an internal existence that is forever shaped by our awareness of our own mortality. That we know life is weird and then you die. And it puts us into unique positions, because humans do things that will shorten our lifespans. We all want to live for longer. It makes sense. I could imagine if beavers knew that they could do certain things, if they could take little beaver pills that would make them live longer, and the beaver was smart enough, the beaver would. But humans, we do the opposite. We take medicine, we prolong our lives, we do things we know will make us live less time. And almost everyone has at least one thing that they do that they know will decrease their lifespan. Maybe they don't exercise that much. Maybe they eat a lot of excess calories. Maybe they drink alcohol. Maybe they smoke. Maybe they do all of these things. And we all know it, and we all know that thing, whatever that thing, is slowly killing us just a little bit faster, that we could live a little bit longer, we could have a little bit more weirdness in our lives, and we can foresee it, and we choose not to do the right thing. Sometimes we do, maybe most of the time we do, but we always have those moments where it's almost like a human right. There's a human right to look at life and think, yes, I will choose the thing that will make me live less time because it makes my life better. Maybe it makes my life weirder. Maybe it makes my life less weird. But whatever it is, you can choose that.
Chapter 4: Noble Disdain.
I had a philosophy teacher who talked about a noble disdain for the body, that the mind, the soul, is something greater. And you want to treat your body well, but there are moments where you want to look down on it. You want to be better than your body. You want to not just be the meat package you come in, and you want to live for something else. And so you don't live as long as possible. I think this awareness of our own mortality really is ingrained into the human existence. One of the questions I asked my dad when I was a kid, because I was one of those kids who asked a million questions. When I was like 2 years old, I looked up at my dad and I said, "Daddy, what happens when we run out of tomorrows?" And my dad, my dear beloved dad, calmly explained that in about 5 million years, the sun would begin to die. And before the sun died, it would increase in volume and it would swallow the earth and it would burn away everything here. But it was okay because humanity would have either died out or changed into something else, evolved into something else. I didn't really understand what evolution was, but my dad told me that the world was going to end, but it was okay because everyone I knew would already be dead by then, that I would not see the end of the world, so I should not wonder about the end of the world. Recently, human consciousness has reached a new level of this. We don't have some weird off prediction of the apocalypse. We aren't, joining a religious... some of us are joining cults that are saying the world will end very soon. But more than that, we know what the future will be like to some extent. We know our actions shape the future. And there are things we could do now that could make the future better. We could make everything better. For the earth, for the animals, for the plants, for humanity, for our children, for our descendants. We could make the future better. Maybe even, for the younger among us, within our own lifespan, our actions could make the world better or worse. And we're like someone who keeps on smoking tobacco. Even though we know, burning fossil fuels is bad for the planet, it's making things worse, that overfishing, overhunting, these things are bad for the environment, that they will make our future worse, we are doing them because we have this idea that we want to make the present better. It's like when my professor talked about having a noble disdain for your body, it's like we took that concept, we're like, yeah, we like that. We like having a noble disdain for the body, but we want for the earth. We want to have a noble disdain for the earth, and honestly, that's a little bit disgusting. It feels like the earth should be sacred, no? And this is why I was going to talk about sharks. I was going to begin this video talking about sharks, and I was going to say that sharks are older than the rings of Saturn. This is another thought that lives in my head. I learned it a few years ago, but it lives in there, in my head. It's one of those things, life is weird and then you die. Sharks are older than the rings of Saturn. It does not escape my head. Because I didn't know anything was older than the rings of Saturn. The rings of Saturn formed between 10 and 100 million years ago. And sharks formed 450 million years ago, which means when the rings of Saturn formed, sharks were already an eldritch abomination. They are one of the oldest things in our solar system.
Chapter 5: I really cannot believe how old sharks are.
And I think sometimes humans have a bad perception of history. History began, I don't know, let's say 10,000 years ago. About, people often say when the Roman Empire was around, the oldest pyramids were older to the Roman Empire than the Roman Empire is to us. The pyramids are really old. When the first pyramid was being built, the last mammoth had not yet died. There were still mammoths, woolly mammoths, on this earth when the pyramids were being built. And a lot of what it means to be human, agriculture, what we think of being a human now, started about 10,000 years ago. But 450 million years ago, that is incomprehensible. The trees on this earth, not the dinosaurs, not whatever animals came before the dinosaurs, of which I do not remember the name in this moment, the trees formed on this earth 400 million years ago. Think about that. When the first sapling grew into a tree on the face of the earth, for 50 million years, there had already been sharks swimming around in the unknowable depths of the ocean. We haven't explored all of the ocean yet. But we're humans. We see the future. We see how our actions are affecting the future. We see what we are doing to everything, to us, to ourselves, to the animals, to the sharks, to the world. And we see that we are changing our climate, and with sharks, we're simply overfishing them. And so the sharks are endangered. A lot of them are. A third of shark species are critically endangered. We are slowly destroying this eldritch abomination, and nobody's talking about this. I mean, I'm sure people who care about the environment are talking about this, but I don't see normal people talking about this, and that just seems really weird to me. It's like how life is weird and then you die. That feels like it's a thing we all know, and we just spend so little time talking about it, how weird life is, how weird our existence, our brief existence on this planet is.
Chapter 6. Stick handlers aren't crazy enough.
And it really is weird, one of the reasons I can't take Christians seriously is because I don't think they take their own theology, their own beliefs seriously. Because they talk about miracles, and they talk about miracles, like things that you wouldn't expect in your day-to-day life. They believe God made everything, and sometimes God does weird things, sometimes God causes an eruption, or whatever he did to Job, or sometimes he makes a virgin pregnant, sometimes God comes down and sends angels. God can do anything, and when something weird happens, that's a miracle, but it should already be a miracle. Like, if someone gets cancer and the cancer is miraculously cured, from a Christian perspective, if you believe it all comes from God and God could just as easily do anything, that is as much a miracle as the person being alive in the first place. And it really is. It should be a miracle, Like, they look at the wonders, the mystery of life, and they go, oh, I have an answer. And they have this answer in their book, and they have God. And they say, this is the miracle that we have. And I think that's where Christianity comes from. People looking at life, they're looking at how weird it is. They're looking for some kind of explanation why things happen in a certain way, why it ends, why people die, how you are alive, how you can be, how consciousness, have a perspective, how you can just walk around and a rock can't, for instance. What separates you from a chemical reaction? There has to be something that separates you from a chemical reaction. I think that has to be a fundamental human belief, because we see that we have a perspective. We perceive ourselves as choosing things, as experiencing things, and fire does not. Rocks do not do these things. Random chemical reactions do not do these things. There must be something else, and we say, okay, so this is caused by God. But when the Christians talk about it, I can't take them seriously, because they have a debate about whether miracles happen or don't happen. Everything should be a miracle to them. And they were promised miracles. If you read the New Testament, Jesus Christ talks about this. He talks about how Christians will heal people, how they will perform miracles, how they will handle snakes. Jesus Christ walks on water, everyone talks about that, but they don't talk about how Peter walked on water a little bit, and then he fell, and then Jesus Christ said, Oh, ye of little faith. That's what he said. When you can't walk on water, it's because you don't have enough faith. So this is my question to the Christians. Where are they? Where are they trying to walk on water? And where do they fail? Where is the Christian pastor who gets up there and tries to walk on water, and when he can't do it, where does he say, oh, it's because he didn't have enough faith? You know, there are like Christian snake handlers, because Christ said that the Christians would handle snakes, and so that's what they do. And sometimes they get bitten, and sometimes they have to go to the hospital. Sometimes they need medical treatment. Sometimes they don't, because it's just the will of God. And people look at them like they're crazy, like because they believe that they should handle snakes, and they go out and they do it. But I think they're still halfway. They're still lukewarm. Like they're trying to handle snakes. Bitch, I want to see you try and walk on water and heal people. This is nothing. This is nothing compared to what Christianity promises. It really is a miracle from God. And we already have miracles. We already have things that are so weird that we have life, which is a miracle. Then why can't they believe in the other miracles? And I don't think they really believe in any of it. I don't think they can truly believe all of what they say they believe, because their actions do not meet the actions of someone who does believe it.
Chapter 7. Will sharks survive?
So life's a miracle. There's a miracle. It's all pretty weird. And we have the sharks, and we're driving them to extinction. You know, these creatures, they've been here longer than the trees, longer than the rings of Saturn, a whole hell of a lot longer than human history, longer than humanity. And we're killing them. Because we want to. Life is weird. We get to do whatever we want. We go on and we start killing the sharks. And people aren't really talking about it. They don't talk about how we're killing the sharks. You know, we talk about pandas. And I think people talk about pandas because, you know, the Chinese government, I think, puts a lot of money into, like, propaganda for pandas, building up as, like, a national symbol. You know, pandas are cute. Everyone wants to save the pandas. Sharks aren't particularly cute. But I think, more than that, we're afraid of sharks. You know, like, a whole 2 or 3 generations of, at least Americans, saw the movie Jaws, watched that and went, oh, sharks are bad. And now whenever a shark dies, you go, oh, well, at least it's not going to kill me, you know? What good are the sharks? They can't possibly be a important part of the ecosystem. And then we ignore actual data around how many sharks kill people as opposed to, like, vending machines, or, like, how many hippos kill people, because we're really bad at measuring statistics and interpreting them. And there hasn't yet been a blockbuster movie about a monster hippo eating people. Although I think that'd be a pretty good movie. You know, I'd watch that, about a monster hippo eating people. You know, these sharks, they've lived through everything. They've lived through mass extinctions before. They lived through so many things that killed everything else. But nothing lives forever. You know, life is weird and then you die. That applies to everything. That applies to the rings of Saturn, you know? In 100 million years, they're gonna disappear too. And so I'm wondering, you know, I'm looking at the sharks. Will they survive us? Is the thing I have to wonder. Will we do anything to stop ourselves from killing the sharks? You know, it's like, imagine a human, a smoker, and they're in a room with all of the sharks in existence, and they're just smoking it up. And the smoke is filling the room and slowly, one by one, killing the sharks. Will that person, will they stop smoking in time to save the sharks? Because, you know, they did. They survived everything. But will the rings of Saturn outlive the sharks just because we want to boil the ocean to make some shark fin soup? Comments, I normally make videos that are slightly less manic about books and language and things I find interesting. So if you want to hear me talk about one of what used to be my favorite books and how it was written by not a shark but an actual monster, Neil Gaiman, you can click over here. But don't forget to drop me a like before you go. And remember, good night, good day. Good potato. This potato is about to die. It's not long for this world. I hope it's lived a satisfyingly weird life, this potato.